Yeah, welcome everyone to the third in a series of 9 weekly webinars from me. My name is Mark, and I'm Associate Director for Academic Skills at the university. In the first 2 sessions, we did an introduction to academic writing and academic communities. We started to look at the relationship between reading and writing by using a framework called They Say, I Say, which really the basic building blocks of good academic writing. In webinar number 4, we're going to start looking at how we tackle assignments by with a focus on how we understand the questions that we're asked in assignments, and then how we start to answer them by looking at how we read and think and then write in response to questions. But at the end of webinar 2, I had a few questions and requests, and I thought this would be a good opportunity to try to deal with some of those. So the title I've given to this session is actually Writing and Thriving at University. We will do a little bit more about writing, but really specifically looking at some elements of language that I think can really help you with your writing at university, but your communication in academic contexts more generally. We'll come to that later. But first, so one of the requests I received at the end of the last webinar was from someone saying they want help in surviving at university. And I think I want you to do much more than survive. I want you to succeed. The university wants you to succeed, and we want you to thrive. So there's a focus on thriving, and so I'm interested in some of the things that you tell me. But I think there's a theme that we'll be exploring today, where I want to explore what tools that we can give you for your success at university. More than I'm not looking to give you rules. I'm looking to give you tools to achieve the things that you want to achieve. Now, at the time that I'm recording, I appreciate that hopefully some people will watch a recording of this in the future, but if you're together live, I've got 9 people currently in the Menti, but I think there are many more people in the webinar. So there's a link in the chat that you can follow to join the Menti, or you can go to a browser, type in menti.com and enter the number 8585-8621. And I have a simple question for you. Perhaps you didn't notice, but we are now in winter time in the UK, in the sense that at the weekend we changed the clocks, and the clocks went back 1 hour. Now, when I was a teenager, this was my favorite weekend of the year, because it meant I had 1 hour extra to sleep. I've spoken previously about how much I love being a dad and how important it is for me to be a father. What I learned as a father when I was, especially like with a baby, was that babies don't care about the time, and they're going to wake up when they're going to wake up. So the weekend where we put the clocks back is actually a 49-hour weekend. If you've got small children, you might be feeling like really tired as a result of that. If you haven't and you've been able to get more sleep, then great. But what did you do with your extra hour last weekend? Please share via the Menti. And if you haven't joined the Menti yet, just check the chat and you'll see a link that will take you directly there. Someone is clearly a very good student, saying that they use their extra hour to do research. But it looks like the most common and most popular answer here is sleeping. So if you did manage to get 1 extra hour of sleep over the weekend, then I'm really happy for you. I hope that means you're feeling more energized and rested now. Okay, great. So that's how we've started. And this is related to the topic of going beyond surviving as university students and starting to thrive. And I'll put these things into academic context, but they're also, I think, quite practical things. So starting with the academic, and given that this is a webinar in which we've spoken in previous sessions about the relationship between reading and writing, one of the things that it might be quite important to do as you progress through your studies is to take notes. I appreciate that not everybody does that or doesn't do it yet, and you might not have a system to do it. I'd just like to share that I'm in front of me right now. I have a notebook, which is where I write down all of my my work notes. I have a diary, which is where I kind of do planning and also write my kind of family notes. And this blue book is really special because it's where I keep some reading notes. But I also use, perhaps you use just loose bits of paper and you find a way to organize them later. And perhaps you use something digital. So some people will make notes on their phones. I use a digital note-taking app that I really like called Obsidian. I can see 5 people in the Menti have said that they use a digital note-taking tool. If you'd like to write the name of the digital note-taking tool that you use in the chat, I'll be really interested. One person has admitted that they don't take notes. I would suggest that if you're not taking notes yet, you want to start taking notes very soon. One of the challenges of being successful in our studies is we meet lots and lots of different information and ideas, and that's that's the great thing about like learning, isn't it? That's a wonderful thing about being a university student, is you get time to devote to new information, new ideas, new reading, and we have to try to find ways of like capturing the things that we find interesting and important in a way that we can organize and retrieve. So let me ask you another question. This is currently how you're taking notes and keeping records. There are many different ways to continue this sentence, but what do you think is important for your notes to be? Like, good notes are what? How would you describe good notes? If you think your own notes in your notebook or in your digital apps are good and effective, then why is that? What's special about your notes? So what? I haven't got any. I haven't got any answers so far, but I'll give you time to think if you like. There you go. Good notes use keywords, maybe. Good notes are flashcards for exams. Yeah, I like if you're being assessed by exams and by having tests where you have to remember information, then flashcards are really good. If you're learning a foreign language, then flashcards are pretty good like that too. But just beware, just think about the kind of assessment that you do as a university student, because actually at Hertfordshire, we don't have so many exams. There are lots of courses that you can do at UH where there's no assessment by exams. So flashcards might be good for learning kind of facts and details, but there are lots of assessments that you can do at university that are testing something quite different. So good notes are concise and easy to review. I think that's a really good point. We need to be able to find things that we've written down. So if we write down a lot of information, it's easy for the key details to get to get lost. I'm glad that someone thinks it's okay to be messy, but also important, because, you know, I think my own notes are a little bit messy. Informative, yes, you have to be able to rely on your own notes. Readable, yeah, you have to be able to read your own notes. I think this is really important. Someone's put dated. I think it's a really good idea to put dates on your notes. And what else have we got? Good notes are a record of your studies. Yeah, you want them to be a record. Biggest word on the page right now is understandable as well. Let me ask a connected question. So imagine you're reading something, and I expect that most of you have read something for your studies this week or are about to. If you are making notes in your notebook or on a digital app about your reading, what kind of details do you think are important to capture? And I'll point out at this stage that there are kind of many different answers that you could give here. So anything you want to add to the Menti is great. And I will keep posting links to the Menti in case you haven't been able to join it yet. So key points. Well, I think you have to decide what the key points are, right? So that can be a challenge. But it's a very it can be very helpful if you've got a particular assignment that you're working towards. That will guide you as to like what the key details are. Something which you're not aware of and interested to know about. Yeah, so I think it's a really good idea to record like details about what you want to explore or research in more detail. I think therefore that including questions in your notes and kind of like going back to those questions and exploring the answers to it might be really useful. Charts and mnemonics, in case you don't know, mnemonics are kind of ways of remembering. So I can still remember a mnemonic from when I was like 10 or 11, which was some old hags can't always hide their old age. And that gives me, I think, 3 formula for trigonometry. But again, university study, especially at master's level, which many of the people in the session will be, is not just about remembering facts, but about what we do with the knowledge. So key events, dates, statistics, measurements, connections, I think is a really good thing to be able to write down. So you might find it useful if you're writing in a notebook to put numbers on your pages. So like you'll see like on my notebook, I number my pages so that I can also make links between different notes that I've made. And I have an index page so that I can see very easily where I've stored different bits of information. The utility of information, I think that's a nice way of putting it, like like what are we going to do with the information we've written down? And I feel like there's one thing missing from the suggestions that you've made. So I'm just going to give it 30 seconds to see if anyone wants to add the extra detail that I think is really important. So we've got lots of people have written something like key points or key arguments. We've got like statistics, numbers, the things that we might want to learn, the things that we want to use. Definitely like questions and areas for further exploration. But there's one thing I think we're missing that is really important. I think particularly important when you're a university student, but also important generally. Someone's added diagrams, which is fine if you're good at drawing. Supporting data, I think is kind of already covered in what's been said. I'm going to give it 5 seconds and I'm going to add my own suggestion. Reference to where you got the information from. This wasn't the answer I was looking for, but I think this is really important. If you're doing, if you're making notes on things that you've read, actually notes on any information you're encountering, you need to keep really clear records of where you found that information. You want to be able to go back to it and you want to be able to reference it. Okay. So yeah, if you want to keep, whenever you read something, write out a full reference. I tend to use electronic notes for my reading notes generally because that makes it easier for me to add things like references and do bits of writing that I can reuse later. But okay, so the one thing that I think is missing from this now is your own thoughts and your own reflections. We've kind of got that because we had like something which I'm not aware of and interested to know about it. I think this is actually capturing your own thinking and your own interest. But learning at university and becoming a successful university student is about going beyond just learning the things that you find, but it's a relationship with the information that you find and a relationship with knowledge that's going to change over time. And you achieve that by asking yourself questions like, what do I think about this thing that I'm reading? Am I persuaded by it? Am I interested by it? What else do I want to learn? What does this make me think about? I mean, someone wrote connections, and that's a really good word here. How does this link to other things that I've read? How does it agree or disagree with other things that I've read and I'm familiar with? When you write notes, I think it's really important to somehow show your own thinking. People do this in different ways. So I do it by, I write whenever I have a thought and I want to show my future self, this is what I was thinking at the time. I write my initials. I just write MGH and then I write my thoughts. Or I might highlight those so that I can go back and find them again. What some people do is after taking notes on what they've read, they try to write a short summary at the end, maybe 1 or 2 sentences about what the text is about and what they think about it. But we've been talking in the last 2 sessions about they say, I say, and academic writing as a conversation. So our notes need to help us to take part in that conversation. And your voice and your contribution is a really important part of that conversation. So you really want to capture what you're thinking at the time that you're reading. And that might be about the things that you're finding difficult and you want to ask someone for help with. But it could be like what is sparking in your brain at the moment you write that, because that will also help you to communicate those ideas to other people in speaking and in writing later. Okay, I think I'm not going to say anything more about note taking for now. I'll come back to it in future webinars. If you are finding it difficult to take notes, or you want to check that your note taking is on track and kind of you're doing the right kind of thing, you could see a member of the Hearts Academic Skills team any day of the week, any work day of the week between Monday and Friday. There'll be a member of my team in one of the learning resource centres. So Monday to Wednesday, that's College Lane. Thursday and Friday, de Havilland. In the learning resource centre, in the study success hub, from 10 to 5 every day, there'll be a member of the Hearts Academic Skills team, and you could go along and talk to them about your note taking and anything. You can share anything you're particularly proud of, or talk about anything you're worried about and want to improve. Okay. It's really important though that I'm not trying to give you rules about note taking. There's more than one way to take notes, and I think what's really important is that you find a process and a style that works for you and that you can feel proud of and excited by sometimes too. Okay, I asked you before about types of note taking. Some of you use digital note taking platforms or apps for your notes. But have you tried any of these reference management tools? Now, while you're answering the question, and please join the Menti if you haven't already done so, you may be asking, what is a reference management tool? In a previous webinar, someone at the end asked if I could give a demonstration of how to use a tool like Mendeley. Now, I'm not going to give you a demonstration. I'll say something about this if you like. So a reference management tool will typically be a platform for you to gather together information about the different things that you've read. Some of them, like Mendeley and Zotero, work by you can just put a folder full of PDFs and either import them to the software or point the software to your folder, and it will organize your PDFs and extract bibliographic detail from it. Some of these products are absolutely free, but it depends on how you want to use them. We don't. There are various like workshops that you can attend at the university to find out more about some of these kind of tools. But what I would say is the most important aspect of using a reference management tool is like having a system that works for you. Don't feel like you have to learn how to use one if you're not currently in need of something. I will very quickly show you. It will be difficult to see, but if I switch tabs, this is, I'm a user of something called Zotero. And I have Zotero on my iPad, I have it on my laptop, I can access it in a browser. And what I do when I've got some new PDFs to read, I send them to Zotero, and I actually use Zotero for my reading. So I can do digital reading in the app, and that allows me to also make notes and highlight aspects of things. So particularly for journal articles, which I tend to access as PDFs, I use it as a kind of reading tool. However, let me show you. I do think that if anyone feels stressed about referencing, you don't need to, right? Like, put your energy and your time into reading and thinking and writing, but something like referencing and how we do it and how it should look is something that a reference management tool can do for you. So, for example, if I take any text from my library and let's go here, yeah. In Zotero, I can, just from the details that are in the PDF, I can generate a citation, or I can generate an item for my bibliography, and Zotero will give me the format according to the referencing system that I need. At the end of the last webinar, someone asked for guidance on the referencing style at Hertfordshire. There is no one referencing style at Hertfordshire because it depends on your school and it depends on your subject. But one of the most common is Harvard. Now, Harvard does not, Harvard is an odd name actually for what it is. So we use a guide called Cite Them Right. So Cite Them Right 12th edition Harvard will show you exactly how it should look. But you may be in a subject area where you're asked to use APA, for example. And in a tool like this, I can switch to APA. Apologies if this is too small to see. And then what happens is Zotero immediately changes the formatting for me. So please, please, please try not to feel stressed or anxious about referencing styles, because there are good tools like this and quite reliable tools like this that will do the kind of do the formatting for you. What we're going to look at later is actually how you think more about the relationship between reading and writing and your own language choices, and that's what I think really matters. But yeah, you can play with any of these tools. For those of you who've said something else, feel free to use the chat to tell me what other things that you're using. But I strongly recommend here that you do not try not to rely on generative AI tools for formatting references, because you can't be sure that it will get it right. Be careful with websites that promise that they will give you something that they might not do correctly. I'm telling you that things like Mendeley, Zotero, and EndNote and BibTeX should all work for your purposes, and you don't need to look far beyond them. By the way, I used to be a big user of Mendeley, but they killed their iPad app, and I like to read on my iPad and highlight that like that. So I had to give up Mendeley. So yeah, I feel like Mendeley is my ex. I see it's very popular here though. Okay. All right, a quick question for you, just in case you don't know, but which of the following pieces of software, or which of the following tools do you have free access to as a University of Hertfordshire student? I've got 5 things listed here: Microsoft Office, Microsoft Copilot, Cite Them Right, which is a tool for giving you the correct format of references according to the referencing style that you need to use, Adobe Express, and LinkedIn Learning. Only 4 people have answered so far. I'll wait until at least 15 have answered. There are 31 people in the Menti. If you're in the main meeting but you haven't joined the Menti yet, you can go to menti.com and enter the code 85858621. You're very welcome to, if you can't access the Menti for whatever reason, you're very welcome to type an answer in the chat. I'm keeping an eye on the chat. Interesting that we've got a real range of answers here, but of all the people who have responded to the Menti, we don't have like 100% score for any of these tools, and this is a kind of trick question. So in case you don't already know, you have access to all of these things for free as a University of Hertfordshire student. So you shouldn't be, there are no tools that you need to pay extra for as a university student, because you already have access. What you'll need to do is use your UHID and password to access them. But if you do that through Office, you'll be able to download and install the software on a laptop. You've got Copilot built into that. Check any assignment briefs that you're given before you do, because you need to know what will be allowed as appropriate use of of Microsoft Copilot or not. We're often fine with you using Microsoft Copilot as a kind of as a proofreading and editing tool. My advice there would be to make sure that like it is being, I would say, not even a co-pilot, but a passenger. Make sure that you're driving the car and you're making all the decisions, and that any tool that you use is helping you to do that. Don't let machines make decisions for you. Okay, so that was just to let you know that you've got access to all of these things. And I've got some wonderful colleagues who are kind of digital skills specialists who offer all sorts of help with some of these tools. So if you are, if this is something that you are interested in, then add it to the chat at either during the session or at the end, and I can provide some links for you. Okay. Another question here, which is about you and what you use for your studies. Which of these devices do you use for your university studies? Do you use a desktop? I think you can give multiple answers if they apply. Do you use a laptop? Do you use a desktop computer? Do you use a tablet, or do you primarily use a phone? Lovely. And well, you can maybe this is useful to you because you can see what other people do. If you didn't already know this, there are lots of desktop computers that you can use on campus, and it's your right to use them. You can borrow laptops from the LRCs if you don't, if at any point you don't have access to one. I would strongly, strongly, strongly recommend, however, that whenever you start to do some writing, when you do academic writing, we do not recommend relying on a phone for your academic writing. So if you can borrow a laptop from the university, you can use desktop computers at the university. When I was a student last century, I didn't have my own computer. I used desktop computers at my university for all of my writing. So that's always an option for you. It can be hard to write long pieces of complex writing on a phone. So just be careful there and let us know if you need any help in accessing those other kind of devices. All right, we're going to move away from tools a little bit now, although I think what I'm doing is kind of giving you a kind of thinking tool. I'm going to show you a slide. The next slide will give you an opportunity to answer this question. But just have a think. The number 168 is very, very close to a number that people are going crazy for at the moment. So I have that absolute privilege to spend my life with my 12-year-old daughter, who'll be 13 soon. If you have any 12-year-old children in your life, you may be aware that the combination of numbers 6 and 7 together make everyone go crazy in, I think, a really fun and sweet way. But a lot of people find it annoying. But I'm here all day for 6, 7. What's special about the number 168? Is multiple choice for you. Is it the number of credits needed for a master's degree, the number of attempts you get at assessments, the number of minutes late you can submit assignments before receiving a penalty, or is it the number of hours in a week? Maybe I should be horrified that when two people answer the question, one of them has said it's the number of credits needed for a master's degree. I'll talk to these different things while you're answering. I think we can start to see that there is a preference for one particular answer. The number of credits you require for a master's degree is usually 180. We do have some 2 years masters where the number of credits required is 240. If you're doing a 180 credit master's degree, it is possible to get your master's degree if you pass 150 credits, but it depends on the program that you're on and what you've done with your overall score and what happens with those remaining 30 credits. But master's degree is 180 credits. I can't spell the word attempts. I'm sorry about my typo there. You do not get 168 attempts at assessments. You typically get up to 3 attempts, but the third one you have to pay for. You do not get 168 minutes after a deadline to submit before receiving a penalty. Again, there's a spelling mistake in there, which I'm really sorry for. It's a typo, not a spelling mistake. But wonderful. Yeah, most people have recognized that 168 is the number of hours in a week, right? And I just want you to think about that, because one of the biggest challenges for us as students is to manage our time and to stay kind of to balance the different things in our life within the time available to us. So I think it can be a useful exercise to really think about those 168 hours in a week and what you need to do with them. On this slide, I've got 9 different activities, 9 different things that you may or may not need to do in your life. And I'd just like you to rank them in terms of your own personal priorities. What's the most important to you? What's the least important to you? Getting enough sleep, eating healthily, doing exercise, looking after family, doing paid work, doing unpaid work, studying, socializing, relaxing. I know that in order to answer this question in the Menti, it will take you a little bit of time, but what we should start to see, which is what we're seeing now, is an aggregate of the different answers that you give. Please don't give the answer that you think I want to see, because this will be anonymous. There's no credit for you if you give an answer that you think I want to see. I'm really curious to know, like, what are your priorities? What should you be giving most time to in a day? And some of these things, I appreciate you may feel like actually there isn't a choice. There are certain things that you have to do. And that's absolutely fine. Sometimes you may find your priorities in life are difficult to juggle, and sometimes things happen that are beyond your control. It's really important that you speak to us, speak to program leads, speak to your personal tutor, let people in the university know if your conflicting priorities are having any impact on you. Now, probably if you are attending this webinar live, it's because you're a really good and serious student. So maybe I shouldn't be surprised that studying is our #1 priority. I'd like to suggest, though, that maybe number 2 and 3, everybody's, well, it should be the overall top 2 priorities for us as a group. And the reason I say that is because if you don't eat healthily, if you don't look after yourself and you don't get enough sleep, then you're not going to have good quality studying time, right? I think we all know what it's like to try to study when we're really tired or we're unwell. We probably won't learn. We probably won't be very productive. And we could spend lots of hours studying, but actually we're just sitting there staring at a book or staring at a screen and not doing the things that we want to do. So I'd like to suggest that you spend some time on this later. You've already thought about there what your priorities are. And we said that you have 168 hours in a week. So maybe just make a list of your priorities and write down how many hours do you need for each one. Like, you may think, I need 10 hours of sleep every night, otherwise I can't function. I mean, 10 would be a lot, but that would be 70 hours. So that I was briefly muted there. I don't know why. So imagine that, if you decide that you need 10 hours sleep a night in order to function, that means that's 70 hours in a week, and that leaves you 98 hours to do everything else. How have, break this down for yourself later, put it in your notebook. Can you protect some time so that you make sure that you get, I don't know, 7 or 8 hours of sleep every night. Give yourself at least an hour or two every day to make sure that you have an opportunity to eat something healthy. Give yourself a couple of hours per week to do some exercise so you stay healthy like that. I can see that not many of you care about doing unpaid work. So that's absolutely fine. You don't need to prioritize those things. If you have to look after family members, especially children, that might be your number one priority. And I completely understand and appreciate that. Studying doesn't need to be 10 or 12 hours every day. If you can look for between 30 and 40 hours a week, I mean, my working week is supposed to be 37 hours a week. Members of staff at the university are supposed to work for 37 a week. I think most of us work more than 37 hours a week, but I think it would therefore be reasonable to think that you might be doing a similar amount of hours of studying, which includes classroom time. So organizing your time by thinking about your priorities and allocating a number of hours per week to them might help you. And it might also help you to see where you could potentially use some time to do something else. So for example, if I know that some of you, when you come to campus, you might live a bit further away. It might take you 1 hour to come to campus. If you come to campus 3 or 4 times a week, and that means 6 to 8 hours a week is spent traveling, well, is there a way that you could use that time reading so that actually you're doing some of your studying while you're traveling? Could you use an app to like read audio to you? Sorry, yeah, read to you so that you can listen to it rather than having to read. So we've got some really good digital resources in the library that will read books to you, which would allow you maybe a bit more freedom to read and study while you're traveling. Okay. Thank you very much for thinking about what we've done so far. Is we've thought about the different things that we do on a day-to-day basis, how we manage our time, what tools we use, how we're doing all of those things to help us stay on top of our studies. And I'm now going to kind of move back to our kind of main topic of the relationship between reading and writing, and actually language as well. So hopefully you can read what's on the slide right now. It says, "The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog." Maybe give a thumbs up in the Menti if you've ever seen that expression before, because I think I first saw this expression in the 1980s in a very particular context, but I would completely understand it if you've never seen this before. Okay, one person has seen it before, but only one so far. So, what do you think it means? What's special about the sentence, "The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog"? Now, we've already established that you're very good students, you're very smart, bright, intelligent people. So any observation you want to make about that sentence might be fine. And I'm interested to know what you think might be special about that sentence. If it's easier to say this than to write, you're very welcome to use a microphone. You could raise your hand in the chat if you want to. Now, only one person had seen this sentence before, and the first person who's answered the question has actually got the right answer. So thank you very much to whoever wrote "not sure." Oh my gosh. Someone has written a pangram or hollow alphabetic sentence. It's a sentence that contains every single letter of the alphabet at least once. No, if this is if you wrote this sentence and this came from your head, or you just took it from your notes or something like that, amazing. That everybody else in the webinar is either thinking that you're a genius or that you just Googled it or went to Chat GPT. I'm not going to give my opinion. This is nice. Look, we should not be lazy like a dog. We should be active. There's a fox and a dog in the context. Foxes are generally afraid of dogs. This is the correct answer, though. That sentence has all of the letters in the alphabet. So I don't know. I've always quite liked that as a fun sentence. I was first introduced to it in the 1980s when I first used a computer, and I didn't have any games to play on the computer. The closest thing I had to a game was some like typing training. And can you imagine, like, if you have a Nintendo, an Xbox, PlayStation, or the games on your phone? Imagine poor me in the 1980s. The first time I used a computer, the only game I had was just to practice typing, and I loved it. And I had sentences like the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. There you go. There's something else about this sentence that I quite like, and it's something about the grammar that we're going to explore in a bit more detail. So what's one of the features of the sentence, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, is that it contains something called noun phrases. And I'm going to say a little bit more about those. I'll ask you a question maybe so that we can explore what I mean by noun phrases. Here you go. Sorry, let me just go back to the quick brown fox. So there are two noun phrases in the sentence. One is the quick brown fox, and one is the lazy dog. I'll go back to my picture. So the lazy dog has 3 words. The quick brown fox has 4 words. If you've studied grammar before, you probably know that the words fox and dog are nouns. But what's really important in the grammar of this sentence is that the words the, quick, and brown all serve the purpose of giving more information about the word fox. And the words the and lazy, they serve the purpose of giving more information about the word dog. So these words fox and dog are both nouns, but we can also think of them as head nouns in a noun phrase. So a noun phrase is a phrase that includes a noun and information about that noun. And I'm going to suggest that they are the key to concision and precision in academic writing. I've said in the previous webinars that the 3 fundamental elements of academic style are that academic writing is concise, precise, and respectful. When we talk about referencing and writing about other authors, that's us being respectful. Noun phrases, I think, are the key to being concise and precise. And the more that you read academic text, the more you will notice the power and the prevalent, as in like how common they are, of noun phrases. But I'll give you a nice easy noun phrase to begin with. And it's this. So here's a sentence. Mark is a 50-year-old man with rapidly thinning hair. Okay. I deliberately in these webinars I try not to lean forward too much so that you don't see where I'm losing my hair. I'm very paranoid about that. I have some very bad dreams about the way I'm losing my hair. It's happened very recently. Maybe not so recently. What is the main verb in this sentence? Mark is a 50-year-old man with rapidly thinning hair. So yeah, I'm basically asking you a grammar question, aren't I? This is very interesting because so far we have 12 answers, 13 answers, and I have to tell you, 15 answers, none of them are correct. So you might want to rethink this. Mark is a 50-year-old man with rapidly thinning hair. What's the main verb? I don't know why someone has put their thumb up there. We've got 15 answers and they're all wrong. Answer number 16 from the group is the word is. We've also got old. I'm glad, I guess, that nobody has suggested that mark is the main verb. I've deliberately entered a profession where my name, Mark, is also a verb. Like I could mark assignments. So, old is an adjective. Rapidly is an adverb. Thinning in this sentence is an adjective. I know it looks like a verb because the ing, but it's not functioning as a verb in this sentence, right? My hair is thinning. Thinning would be the main verb, but in this sentence, the main verb is, and it's actually a very simple sentence. Mark is a right? Mark is a man, and lots of other information there is describing that. So, yeah, a key to reading fluently, reading academic text fluently, is actually identifying as quickly as we can what the main verb in a sentence is and what's going on with the other information in the sentence. I think in 3 webinars, that's the first time I've asked a question where most people got the answer wrong. That just means that we've got something to learn. Okay, how about my next question? We started the sentence with Mark is, and then we had a 50-year-old man with rapidly thinning hair. All of this, a 50-year-old man with rapidly thinning hair, is a noun phrase. And actually, noun phrases, long noun phrases like this, are really common in academic writing. And one of the reasons why they're very common in academic writing is because, as we've said in previous webinars, academic writing tends to have word limits. So typically in academic writing, we're trying to pack as much detail into sentences as we can. But also what we've said in previous webinars is academic writing tends to be about things that are quite complex and that we're interested in complex ideas and concepts. And often we need a lot of words to explain a concept and put it together. And then we establish that becomes like a shell that captures the meaning of what we want to say in a sentence. We've done better in your answers to this question. The majority of you are correct. The word year is actually serving to pre-modify, and that means like to describe the word man. So 50-year-old man is like a way of saying what my age is before the word man. With rapidly thinning hair is a description of man. It's extra information about the man. But 11 of you chose the word man. 12. If you haven't answered, you can answer now because I've already given away the fact that the correct answer is man. Yeah, the head noun in this noun phrase is man. And this helps us because that sentence, Mark is a 50-year-old man with rapidly thinning hair. There's a really simple structure there, which is Mark is a man. But there's also a complex structure, which is the noun phrase, which attempts to give all of the information about Mark, about the type of man he is. A 50-year-old man with rapidly thinning hair. Right. Going back to text that we've seen in previous webinars, we were reading and writing about the reading. Look at this. Here's a noun phrase that came from a reading. Berger's claim that the camera is inextricably linked with capitalism. Which is the head noun here? Berger's claim that the camera is inextricably linked with capitalism. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. One way we can think about this is if this continues into a sentence, what is it about? Berger's claim that the camera is inextricably linked with capitalism. We're really divided, aren't we? And I think what's tricky about this, it goes back to when we were talking about note taking and capturing key words. All of these words look important, right? Berger is the author. Camera, it was all about cameras. And in fact, it was the relationship between cameras and capitalism. So the words camera, capitalism, Berger, all seemed really important. The correct answer here, though, because this is a question about grammar, the correct answer is claim, right? The head noun in this noun phrase is the word claim. And words like claim and argument and suggestion become really important in academic writing because of that idea, remember, of academic writing as a conversation. We're trying to capture the ideas of other people and what other people have said in their writing. So actually, we saw an extract in the previous webinar, which was a claim by an author called Berger. So then when we write about that, it becomes Berger's claim. So the head noun is claim. Berger tells us like the name of the author who gave the claim, and that the camera is inextricably linked with capitalism is what the claim is, right? So if we've got that as a head noun, if we've got that as a noun phrase, we can do all sorts of clever things with a sentence, like I am not persuaded by Berger's claim that the camera is inextricably linked with capitalism, or Berger's claim that the camera is inextricably linked with capitalism is supported by the evidence that, and so on and so on. Okay. You might start to recognize this type of expression as the kind of thing that you're reading regularly. So let's shift it over to you. I don't want to talk about cameras again too much this week. Can you tell me the name of something that you have read for your studies this week? If you can, give me the title of the text and the author of the text. So you might be writing something like, well, I've got a separate laptop here, so I will try to join in with an example of my own. I really hope the lack of answers doesn't mean that nobody has read anything this week. I'm sure you've read something. But if it helps, yeah. You may not be surprised to know that I have camera lucida somewhere on my on my bookcase behind me. Yeah, this week I've been reading a book called Your Brain on Art by Susan Magsamen and Ivy Ross. Writing Ourselves in Sociology by Barbara Rothman. Commercial Awareness by Professor Penny Carey. Very interesting. Penny's the dean of our School of Law and Education. My study notes by me, I think I'm not too impressed by that. This is great, and I love academic titles like that, because I kind of my first reaction to looking at that is like, I don't understand what that is. But then I also think, actually, I know what protein is, and protein profiling as a diagnostic for COVID. I'm starting to do some grammar work here and thinking, oh, the head noun, that's actually a noun phrase, and the head noun there is profiling. So yeah, I can probably guess what that means. I read this novel once upon a time. Is it called Americana, though? Really good book, that. I think her experience of living in the United States is a bit different to the experience you might have in living in the UK. And I hope it's better in the UK. No, I don't think she had a bad experience in the States. Lovely. Right, look at you brilliant people. You're doing some you're all doing some reading, you're reading different stuff to one another. Lovely. Now, I think in order to get the most benefit from webinars like this, it's important to try and do it and not just sit and listen. If you're in a situation where at the moment all you can do is listen, then that's absolutely fine. Maybe there'll be a recording of this available. You can maybe make a note of it somewhere and come back and do this exercise by yourself. But yeah, first thing I've asked you to do is give me the name of something that you've read. We need to do the first bit in order to do the next task. Okay. Whoever did this about the Roland Barthes text, again, I don't know if you've Googled it and if you're copying and pasting that, because that wouldn't be my natural answer to the question. But amazing that you've been reading that. It fits very well with the other books that I've introduced in these webinars. Okay, let's come back to this, because the World Health Organization has declared COVID-19 pandemic in 2019. Is that the title of a text, or is that kind of a summary of what you read? Because what I'd like you to do next, and this is how we're going to work on being more and more precise. Right. Can you write a noun phrase to express a key idea from the text that you read? It's really important that we're just writing this as a noun phrase, not as a full sentence. So earlier when we talked about writing notes to capture our thoughts, or to capture things that to capture key ideas from our reading, this is a key skill to be able to develop. So don't worry if you don't get the noun phrase kind of perfect at first attempt, but this is the kind of thing that we should be trying to do regularly. Like, what's the key idea in the text that I read, or what is a key idea in the text that I read? I appreciate that whoever read Americana, I don't think it's actually more difficult, but you just have to think about things in a more creative way, because you can take a key idea from creative writing from a novel as well. I'm going to attempt to do this myself. Okay. So I'm reading a book called Your Brain on Art, and an idea from the text is the effect that engagement with artistic activity has on the human brain. So I could kind of say more than that maybe, but I think that captures a really important idea from the book that I'm reading, which is, and we can probably all relate to this, that if we make something with our hands, or if we do some painting, if we do something creative, it changes something physically. It has a physical impact on what's going on in the brain. Careful with this, because this is a full sentence. The results of this pilot study suggest that Malditov could be used to develop a relatively rapid and inexpensive assay. I think if we express this as a noun phrase, one way to do it, like if you've written a sentence, turning it into a noun phrase will make it a little bit more compact, and then it will allow us to put that idea into a bigger sentence. So we could take the word suggest, which here is a verb, and turn it into a noun. That becomes suggestion. And then we have the suggestion that could be used to develop suddenly we've turned a sentence into a noun phrase. And actually we could then change it to the pilot studies, or the suggestion from the pilot study that this could be used to develop that becomes a noun phrase. Okay, let me look at what else we've got. You're going to have to tell me more about what ELISA is as a noun phrase. Anaerobic redox potential on Staphylococcus aureus. Again, I love things like this. I don't really understand that at all, but I do recognize that as a noun phrase. It's potential on something. Okay. The struggle of immigration, great. The shock of cultural differences. Thank you very much. I always say in sessions like this, where like everybody can see me and I can't see anybody, when you see me on campus, or if you see me on campus, do stop me and say hello. If you've read Americana and you want to stop me on campus and talk about that, then please do. I'm always available for that conversation. I'll give you a few more minutes so that you can add more here. And then we've got one more question that I'm going to ask you about noun phrases. I just want to show you like what you can do after you've captured something as a noun phrase. You can then take it further. If you've written your noun phrase, it might be a good idea to copy and paste it onto something else. Because what we want to do next is take our noun phrase and say something a little bit more about it. Let's go to my next prompt, which is, can you write a longer sentence beginning with your noun phrase? So my noun phrase was the effect that engagement with artistic activity has on the human brain. My sentence might be, Okay, so I started with the noun phrase, the effect that engagement with artistic activity has on the human brain. And then I add a verb to that. So it can be used in therapies to reduce the impact of trauma over time. And hopefully what you start to see is, well, I read something, I tried to capture an idea from it, I tried to say something about that idea, and perhaps this is starting to look like a sentence that we see in academic writing quite often, because it's trying to say something quite complex, but in a limited number of words. So we're trying to be precise and we're trying to be concise at the same time. I appreciate that this is a more difficult thing to do. If you anything that you share here is anonymous, but I'm also kind of like very happy to comment on anything that you share here, so I can tell you what's going well or what could be improved. I'll give you a couple of minutes to post. If you find that difficult and you want to take some time to do it later and then maybe send it to me by email, you can. But if you share now, I can guarantee some kind of feedback. Okay, so here's an example of this is quite nice in that you've used the name of a text and the author, and then you've told me something that the text does. We can go beyond this. I think I've made it. If you wanted to try and work on this further, you might want to comment on either the challenge or the notion, and you could do that by building like the word notion up into a bigger noun phrase. So it could be Thomas Kuhn's notion of linear scientific progress. Sorry, it's actually I haven't understood that, have I? Thomas Kuhn's challenge to the notion of linear scientific process is, and then you could say something like, is based on, or is founded on, or has led to. So then you start to capture not only what Thomas Kuhn does or says, but then what you want to observe about what they've said. And then our writing becomes much more complex and maybe interesting. The shock of cultural differences that Ifemelu, I'm sorry if my pronunciation is right, experience was significantly more than what she was mentally prepared for. Yeah, okay. I know this book, so I think I know what you're capturing there. The suggestion from the studies is that could be used to develop. I think actually you can go beyond this. So this is another way of reporting what one study says, but what do you want to say about that suggestion? Maybe that suggestion requires further studies or requires like more data in support, or is worth maybe you're going to do some research of your own and you want to say that this suggestion is worth exploring further. I think we are missing a verb here. So rather than hence, which is a way of linking two statements together, we could have aerobic low redox potential could just be some. We're using quite complex noun phrases here, so don't worry about using simple verbs. So it could be has implications for, or has serious implications for, has important implications for. The main verb doesn't need to be a fancy verb, but we do need a verb there. And I think actually just has would be enough there. Yeah, again, like this is a sentence about a book, but I think what I would be interested in reading is your own observation about that glamour and that disillusionment, or the way that it is being captured by the book. Okay, so we're writing quite complex sentences. Our noun phrases give us the potential to pick up an idea from a text and say more about it, maybe to connect it to something else that we've read or to add our own observation. Okay. As I've said, if you haven't had the chance to submit something and receive a comment on it, you're very welcome to email it to me. Before we go, I just want to return to the theme of reporting language. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, some through the Menti, some just for you to think about. In the first two webinars, we looked at they say, I say, so like the way that we might think of academic writing as a conversation, how we might first capture what other authors have said in order to add our own ideas to it. One way of doing that is quite complex, as we've seen, is by using a noun phrase to capture the idea that someone else has expressed, and then using that noun phrase in a sentence of our own so that we can add more detail or our own thoughts to it. But what's very common in academic writing, or what's very useful, is the use of reporting language. I'm just going to share something here, actually, from a study now that goes back 26 years. I mean, we've got more kind of updated research has done on this, but in my area of applied linguistics, there's an author called Ken Hyland who 26 years ago published an article called Academic Attribution, Citation and the Construction of Disciplinary Knowledge. And at the heart of what Ken Hyland said in this article is that academic facts, the construction of knowledge, the construction of academic facts is a social process, and the cachet of a fact, as in like the value of a fact, is bestowed on an author through the process of reading and writing, and through the process of publication and citation by others. And the way that we do that is through this kind of like language of citation and referencing. And what Ken Hyland found in a study in 1999 was actually there's a difference between subject areas. And I think this is worth just keeping an eye on through your reading, that depending on your subject area, you may find are more frequent or less frequent. And what Hyland found, and I think kind of like the last 25 years has borne out, is actually the harder the science, actually the fewer citations that we find in any kind of like 1,000 word stretch of text. And in social sciences and humanities, we find more citations, the use of citation used more frequently. And what Hyland found was also the way that we use citations in these different subject areas is a little bit different. So there's real value in doing reading, because then you start to notice the way that citations are used in your subject area. Now, a really simple distinction that I want to point out before we go is that citations can either be integral or non-integral. And the basic difference here is that an integral citation, has has like a grammatical role within a sentence. So if I write a sentence like this, Berger 2013 points out that the camera was invented in the same year that Karl Marx turned 18, which establishes a link between photography, industrialization, and capitalism. So I've got a nice noun phrase at the end there, a link between photography, industrialization, and capitalism. That allows me to like make an observation about what Berger does in his text. But what I'm reporting from the text is this detail that the camera was invented in the same year that Karl Marx turned 18. And I do that by making Berger the subject of my sentence and saying Berger 2013 points out that. And this could be a text with like 6 authors, or it could be a text with 1 author. I make my citation either the subject or the object of my sentence. Here I've made it the subject of my sentence, and that means this is an example of an integral citation. You might find in your reading that you might find lots of examples of integral citations, but you also might find lots of examples of non-integral citations, which is where the citation is not part of the sentence and it's not part of the grammar of the sentence. It just appears in a bracket at the end of a sentence. So a version of this would be, within 30 years of its invention by Vox-Tolbert, the camera had a diverse range of uses. That's a kind of summary of something that I found in Berger 2013. So I can write it as a sentence and then just put Berger's name at the end of it as a non-integral citation. Be careful with non-integral citations in your own writing, because it can they can cause a little bit of confusion for your reader. So in my example here, within 30 years of its invention by Vox-Tolbert, the camera had a diverse range of uses. Now, if I put Berger at the end of that sentence, it makes it look like the information in that sentence comes from Berger. And I think that's true. What about this, though? Within 30 years of its invention by Vox-Tolbert, the camera had a diverse range of uses, including some that were morally questionable, such as the administration of genocide. Now, if I put a non-integral citation at the end of that sentence, my reader might start to wonder, is all of that information from Berger? Is Berger the person who says it's morally questionable? Is Berger the person who gave the example of genocide? Is Berger who gave the detail about from the first sentence, the beginning of the sentence? I'm actually making maybe 3 different points. I'm giving a fact, I'm giving a kind of judgment, and I'm giving an example of that judgment. Do all 3 come from that one source? If I use the author's name in my sentence, I can be a bit clearer about what the author is saying and what I want to add. Similar in my third sentence, within 30 years of its invention, the camera had a diverse range of uses, including some that were morally questionable. Who is saying that they're morally questionable? Is it me? Is it Berger? Sometimes non-integral citations make it harder for us to show exactly what an author has said compared to our integral citation, where we're able to say Berger points out this, which establishes a link. The which establishes a link is actually me. It's what I've added, my observation about what he does. So I think integral citation can really help us to develop our own academic voice and to show a reader the difference between what an author says and what I say. There's nothing wrong with non-integral citations when used properly, but if we just put them at the end of a paragraph or after like 3 details, it can become a little bit unclear as to kind of exactly which detail comes from the source. Now, quick question for you before we go. Which type of citation is more common in the reading you've done for your subject this week? Do you think integral citations are more common, non-integral citations are more common, or neither are common because in your reading you don't find the author's name at all? In other words, you might use like numeric references. Do you want to tell me you don't know, Or do you want to tell me that you don't care? All of these options are possible. I think if you say you don't care, you might be in trouble later on. I hope that you change that position in the future. And yeah, please do. If you're in this webinar, you might be studying a very similar subject area to a lot of people in the webinar, but you might not be. You might be the only person doing your particular subject. So you may find that non-integral references are more common. You might find that integral references are more common. I'll share a little bit of information about differences between subjects in a moment. But I think the most important takeaway here is just to pay attention to the difference in these types of citation. And in the reading that you do, try and get your own understanding of which ones are more common or integral or non-integral. Notice how different authors use them. Pay attention to, try and capture a sense for yourself of which ones you prefer, which ones you think are easier to understand, and you can make your own decisions and maybe better decisions about which ones you use in your own writing. So thank you. And just to share from Ken Hyland's work, actually, like, he found that in biology, like, non-integral citations are much more common than integral. With integral, he also captures like how many of these are the subject of a sentence compared to other parts of a sentence. But actually found, for example, in a subject like philosophy, integral citations are much more common than non-integral. I'm just about to switch to a different microphone because I think my battery is running out, but I'll leave that slide to people to have a look at. I would be really grateful if you can still hear me. Can you give me a thumbs up in the Menti? Lovely, thank you. Naveed and Paul, you have your hands up. Naveed, if you want to say something, please go ahead. You need to unmute yourself, but then you can. Naveed is saying we can hear you. Thank you.
Actually, sir, you are not audible, so we are now hearing you.
Oh yeah, I've been talking for so long that my AirPods ran out of battery.
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Okay, but we're working again now. Thank you very much. I'll edit that out of the video later. Yeah, and just to show you one final thing is that Ken Hyland's research found that some verbs were much more common in some subject areas than others. So in this table here, I've actually hidden the name of the subjects. But the table shows you how many citations, how many reporting structures were used in per paper in Ken Hyland's study, and what percentage of citations used like a reporting form, which would be a verb, like, for example, say, suggest, argue, claim, point out, propose, thing. So you might want to have a look at that and see if you can guess whether or not your subject area is there. Just to reveal that, in my next slide, I'll show you. Oh, sorry. There you go. Yeah, we probably don't have any philosophy students in the webinar. Please do tell me if I'm wrong about that. But maybe notice that the verb say is really commonly used in philosophy, but not used in other subject areas. If you're doing biology, you'll notice that words like describe, find, report, show, suggest, and observe are the most common verbs used to report what other authors say in biology, compared to words like argue, suggest in sociology, suggest and argue in marketing, and so on. For your own specific subject areas, you can look up research on this yourself if you're really interested, but you can also just notice what verbs you see most commonly in your reading. Okay, that's all from me for now. If you have any questions, concerns, or feedback, you're very welcome to email me at m.holloway3@hearts.ac.uk. You can also use this Menti to add any questions, comments, or requests for future webinars. The next 3 webinars in this series will be focusing very specifically on assignments and tackling assignments. So we'll have the next webinar will be about understanding assignment briefs and what's important about what we're looking for in university assignments. We'll do a webinar where we'll go through an example assignment question, and I'll give you some extracts from some reading so we can see how we put these together into an argument. And then we'll have a webinar where we look at how we organize an assignment around the needs of a question. I'll come back to this at the end, but if you I don't know if that link is correct. Yeah, if you'd like to register your attendance of this webinar, please feel free to use the QR code that's currently on the screen. If you're watching a video recording of this, you can use that as well. And if you bear with me one moment, I will just grab a link to that form and I'll put it in the chat, just so that you can have your attendance recorded. Sorry. So what I find is that at the end of a day, my laptop is really slow, but in the chat, there's a link to the form. I'll go back to my slides now. So if you want to use that QR code, you can, or you can use the link in the chat, and I'll just go back to Menti if you want to add any comments or questions, remarks, requests. But I will bring the webinar to a close now and go back to my lovely family. As a takeaway from this session, you might want to go back to the question of what are you going to do with your 168 hours every week? How can you manage your time in a way that you get the right kind of balance between looking after yourself, looking after your duties, which might be work, might be family, might be both, and how do you also make time for your studies in that? How can you maybe look for opportunities to study while doing other things? I don't think I'm the best example of this, but I do. I use an app called Speechify to read text to me, and that allows me to listen to like academic articles and listen to research while I'm doing things like housework or driving and traveling to and from work. Please do, in your reading and your writing and note-taking, see if you can spare some time to capture ideas in noun phrases, maybe notice the noun phrases that are being used in the reading that you're doing, and that might help you also to read, to increase the speed of your reading, because if you start to notice the structures of sentences, you might start to see that it's not the sentence structure itself that's complex, but some of the noun phrases. And if you can get down to what the head noun is in a phrase, that will tell you what a noun phrase is about. Recordings of webinars are all available each week on Canvas, but I'll also upload them to YouTube. So let me just. So in Canvas here, there's a Canvas page for all of these webinars. You can also enroll yourself. That's the Central Hearts Academic Skills Canvas site. I've just put a link in the chat, and if you scroll through, you'll see a video from week 1 and week 2. But you also might find it convenient to go directly to youtube.com/@heartsacademicskills. If you want to subscribe to that, tell all of your friends and family to subscribe to it. If you give me like thousands and thousands of subscribers, to buy everyone like coffees or pizzas or cakes, whatever, to eat while attending the webinars. That would be great, wouldn't it? Anyway, yeah, I'll put the videos on there on the YouTube channel, and they'll be in a playlist. So if you subscribe to that, you'll get updates automatically. Okay. Thank you again for your time and attendance. Do let me know if you've got any questions, and I'll try to address them through the next few webinars. Okay. Bye-bye. Have a lovely evening, everyone. Take care.